Alright, rosters are starting to come out for the WBC. Rosters for all teams are due on February 7th, and the big event is still about 8 weeks away. But I'd like to do a preview for every team, if possible, and there are 20 teams, so there's no time to waste. Some countries, like Cuba, have announced a 50-man roster, and it'll be narrowed down later. Some countries, like Japan, are announcing the members of the final roster little by little, and they'll eventually have a complete team announced. Other countries, we just have a list of players who've committed to play, but nothing official yet. Korea has announced their final 30-man roster, so that's the country we're starting with here. A little background on Team Korea. This was one of the most successful national teams in the era of the first two WBCs. In the inaugural Classic in 2006, they made it to the semis, where they were beaten by eventual champion Japan. They had beaten Japan in 2 previous meetings in that same tournament. In the next WBC in 2009, they made it to the finals, where they once again lost to Japan. In between those two WBCs, Team Korea won the gold medal at the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. In the time just before the WBSC World Rankings came about, they may have been considered the #1 team in the world at that time. But in the last 2 WBCs, they've been eliminated in the first round. Their only recent success was the 2019 Premier 12, where they finished second to qualify for the Olympics. But at the Olympics, they placed 4th and failed to medal, even though they brought a KBO All-Star lineup. The 2 players Major League fans want to see most, unfortunately, will not be there. Toronto Blue Jays pitcher Hyunjin Ryu, a 2-time Cy Young finalist, had Tommy John surgery this offseason. He won't be available. 16-year Major League veteran Shin Soo-choo is healthy, but he's just not good enough for the roster. He's still a good hitter in the KBO, just not worthy of a WBC invitation. But there are a few Major League players on Korea's roster, some former big leaguers as well, one that will be heading over there after next season, and the rest are the best of the KBO. If you're not too familiar with the KBO, you might not know what to expect. The KBO is usually considered to be at a level somewhere between AA and AAA, but that's all the players of the league average together. At the WBC, you'll only see the very best. Their level of play is at about the Major League level, or at least the level of very good AAA players. Remember, just because they haven't made the jump to MLB doesn't mean they're not good enough. They may not be able to because of their contract with the team, or they may not want to. The best in the KBO earn 7-figure salaries. KBO clubs are able to retain some of their best, even if they are good enough to leave. Let's start with the pitchers. Ryu isn't there, and there are no other Korean pitchers in MLB, so they have to get their arms from the KBO. In recent years, the KBO's best pitchers have mostly been foreign pitchers, but that changed last year as domestic pitchers were at the top of the league's pitching stats. But there's bad news there too. The KBO's ERA king in 2022, Woo Jin-an, did not get an invite. As good as he is on the mound, it would have been a PR disaster. Because of his long history of bullying, he was left off the roster. He was also disqualified from winning the KBO's top pitching award. The next best pitcher in the KBO last year was Kwang Hyung Kim, and he is on the roster. That name should ring a bell for Major League fans, especially St. Louis Cardinals fans. Kim pitched for the Cards in 2020 and 2021. In his last year there, he had a .346 ERA in over 100 innings, mostly as a starter. He was doing alright, but he decided to head home and pitched in the KBO in 2022. He's a 34-year-old lefty with a fastball that gets up to 95, and a good slider. The best pitcher they're bringing from the KBO, and we know he can succeed against Major League hitting. He'll be the ace of this team. Kim and Ryu, or Kim and An, would have made a great 1-2 punch. It's not clear now who's number 2 in the rotation behind Kim, but it's probably 25-year-old Chung Mo-koo. Koo, another lefty, was arguably the best pitcher in the KBO in 2020 with a 9-0 record, a 1.74 ERA, and a 0.81 WHIP in 14 starts. Then he got injured and missed all of the 2021 season. He came back last year and once again looked like one of the best. 19 starts, 2.10 ERA, averaged about 1 strikeout per inning. If he's healthy, he can be just as good as Kim, possibly better. Other possibilities include right-hander Hyungjun So. He had a 3.05 ERA in 27 starts last year. Doesn't sound as impressive as Koo's numbers, but he's only 21, and he could be ready to rise to the top this year. Same for left-handed pitcher Wee Lee-ee. He had an ERA just under 4 in 28 starts, but he's only 20. He can get up to 95 on his fastball and throws a variety of other pitches. Young Pyo Ko, a 31-year-old right-hander, had a 3.26 ERA in 28 starts. He's another possibility. 22-year-old right-hander Tae In-won had a 3.92 ERA in 27 starts. 27-year-old right-hander Se-woong Park, a 3.98 ERA in 28 starts. 23-year-old right-hander Bing Guak, 27 starts, 3.78 ERA. A lot of young pitchers there. It would be great if one of these guys gets out there and exceeds expectations. If Korea is going to go far in this tournament, it'll be because of their pitching. It's hard to imagine this team winning with their bats. But looking at their 2022 performances in the KBO, there's a big gap between Kim and the other starting pitchers. Kim was second in the ERA rankings behind Woo Jin-an. Hyungjun So was the next highest domestic pitcher at number 10. Numbers 3 to 9 were all foreign pitchers. Koo didn't have enough innings to qualify. But assuming that none of these guys are able to rise up and throw 4 or 5 shutout innings against some of the best hitters in the world, they may rely on their bullpen. One advantage the Korean team has is that they have a domestic league stocked with fully developed pitchers that major league hitters have never seen before, and the hitters don't have much time to get adjusted to their pitching. Give them a little time though and they figure them out, especially since some of Korea's pitchers have limited arsenals to select from. So don't be surprised to see them turn to their bullpens early and change pitchers frequently. Here's a look at their bullpen. Woo Suk-go, 24-year-old right-handed reliever who led the league in saves last year. ERA 1.48, WHIP 0.96 in 61 games. Woo Young-jung, 23-year-old right-hander, had a 2.64 ERA and 1.38 WHIP in 67 games. Yong-chan Lee, a 34-year-old right-hander, ERA 2.08, WHIP 1.14 in 59 games. Won-jung Kim, a 29-year-old right-hander, had a 3.98 ERA in 43 games. Chol Won-jung, a 23-year-old right-hander, 3.10 ERA and 1.18 WHIP in 58 games. Some of those numbers look really good, others not so much. But when you combine those relievers with the starting pitchers that'll be working in relief, you've got a pretty strong bullpen. Korea's manager Kang Chol Lee is sharply focused on the team's first game in Pool B against Australia. If they lose that one, they would most likely have to beat Japan and create a 3-way tie and hope to win the tiebreaker to get out of pool play. So it is very important that they beat Australia. For that reason, Lee has chosen pitchers with sharp breaking balls and splitters that he thinks Australian hitters will be vulnerable against. And it's very likely he'll start Kim against Australia and use Koo against Japan. While I expect pitching to be their strength, hitting will be strong too. This should in fact be the best hitting team Korea has ever put out there for any international competition. Lots of left-handed hitters here, including all 3 potential starting outfielders. The one everyone will be watching is reigning KBO MVP Jung-hoo Lee. A 24-year-old hitter almost always plays center field. Dominated the KBO last year, leading the league in batting, on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, and triples, while hitting over 20 home runs. After the 2023 season, he's heading over to MLB. His KBO club has already said they'll allow it. Another outfielder who's already been to MLB is Hyun-soo Kim, a good hitter with the Orioles in 2016, a .300 batter with an .800 OPS, but struggled the following year and returned to the KBO. Now 34, he's still one of the KBO's best hitters. Over 20 home runs, 100 RBI, a .375 on-base percentage. He always plays left. Starting right fielder will most likely be Sungbum Na. That's where he played every game on the field last summer. He has not played in MLB, though he did try to make the jump 2 years ago. He couldn't find a team to sign him. Not for lack of talent, but because of his age. He was 31, now 33. He may very well have succeeded in MLB, but it's hard to find a team interested when you're looking to start your major league career in your 30s. So he'll just have to be content with being one of the best KBO hitters over the past decade. In 2022, he slashed .320, .402, .508 with 21 homers. Other options in the outfield, 32-year-old Hae-min Park last year batted .289, on-base percentage .347, stole 24 bases. And Kun-woo Park, the only right-handed hitting outfielder on the roster. His line last season was .336, .408, .458. Their infield could include 3 active major league players, but there's some uncertainty at first base right now. Ji-mon Choi would seem to be the obvious choice. The 7-year major league veteran had a .341 on-base percentage with 11 home runs for the Rays last year. But he is still recovering from elbow surgery he had last November, and he'll need permission from his new club, the Pirates, to participate in the WBC. The timeline for his return is 7 to 11 weeks, which is about the exact same time as the WBC. He's told the Pirates about his desire to play in the WBC, but they're obviously concerned about jeopardizing his 2023 season. We should know very soon whether he'll be on the team or not. If not, their second choice for first base would be 36-year-old Byung-ho Park. Park was the league leader in home runs last year with 35. But there's a problem there too. Park is coming off a serious ankle injury that limited him to playing mostly as a DH late last season. Another choice could be 23-year-old left-handed hitter Baek-ho Kang. Kang missed over half of last season with injury, but in 2021 slashed .347, .450, .521. But he is not nearly as good defensively as Park. Ideally, they'd have Park at first and Kang at DH. That is, if Choi is not available. 4-year St. Louis Cardinals infielder Tommy Edman figures to be their starting second baseman. He will be the first player born and raised outside of Korea to play for Team Korea in a WBC. His mother was born in Korea, so he qualifies. The 27-year-old won a Gold Glove in 2021. Then last year slashed .265, .324, .400 with 13 homers and 32 steals, only caught stealing 3 times. So someone we know can hit against major league pitching, great defense, and a base stealing threat. Great addition to this team. Another 27-year-old Major League infielder at short, Ha-Sung Kim of the San Diego Padres, a good fielder who slashed .251, .325, .383 last year, with 11 homers and 12 steals. At third base, a KBO legend, 35-year-old Jung Choi, a little past his prime but he can still hit. 26 home runs last year with an OPS of .891. Choi has hit 429 home runs in his career. The record is .467, so Choi could become the new KBO home run king in the next couple seasons. Other infielders, 32-year-old left-handed hitter Ji Hwan Oh. Last season he hit 25 homers and stole 20 bases with an on-base percentage of .357. And 23-year-old left-handed hitter Ha-Sung Kim. Mostly plays second base. Last year he hit .318 and stole 34 bases. Behind the plate will be Lee Ji-young, now 35 but still by far the KBO's best catcher in terms of offensive production. Last year he hit .283, .380, .480 with 20 home runs. Also at catcher, 36-year-old Ji-young Lee. Coming off a down year offensively, he hit .267 with an on-base of .303. Not much power or speed, but he gets the job done behind the plate. Here's what the starting lineup might look like. In the outfield, Hyun-Soo Kim, Jung-Hoo Lee, and Sung-Bum Na. In the infield, Jung Choi at third, Ha-Sung Kim at short, Tommy Edman at second, Ji-Man Choi at first. Again, not sure about Choi. That could easily change to Byung-Ho Park or Baek-Ho Kang. Lee Ji-young behind the plate. Starting pitchers, Kwang Hyung Kim for sure. Chang Mo-koo is probably a lock too. Hyung Jun So and Wee Lee Yi are two other options at starting pitcher. Not really sure about who they'll go with though. So what chance does this team have? Of advancing out of pool play, it would be a huge disappointment if they didn't. Many will disagree with their strategy of focusing on Australia rather than putting their energy into trying to take down Japan. But it really doesn't matter whether they beat Japan in pool play or not. The top two advance, and then they'll play a team from Pool A to try and qualify for the final round. Their first game is against Australia, so if they start Kim in that game, he'll be able to throw in the second round against a team from Pool A, on 5 days rest. What chance do they have to win it all? That will all depend on their pitching. If it plays out like I said, where Kim starts against Australia and then again in the second round, he won't be available in the championship round. Koo will have to pitch like the KBO ace he was in 2020, and the rest of the pitching staff will all need to chip in and throw a scoreless inning or two. Little room for mistakes here. The offense is good, should be able to provide some run support, but the higher the score gets, the more it favors Korea's opponent. If you ask me, I'd say their chances of advancing out of Pool B are over 90%. Chances of winning their second round game, 50-50. Chances of winning it all, 10 to 20%. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comments. That's all for this one, and until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.